Welcome back to Bespoke Addict. I'm dry buffing the 60s alligator skins and the 1786 Russian reindeer. Let me just pop a towel over myself. Excuse me. Yesterday I applied moisturising cream. I think it might have been that one. Yeah, it's a Saphir creme suffine. It's a nice cream. It's not really a cream designed for exotic skins, but it works beautifully well. A lot of the creams that are designed for exotic skins are neutral, and that's fine on really quite recent skins that are in good condition. But it wouldn't be so fine on these. These are from the 60s and they were very, very dry. They'd lost loads of colour and they were covered in polish, which, exotic skin shouldn't really be polished. They don't polish well. I'll try and remember to explain that in a minute. And I'd rubbed the polish off with alcohol. It took quite a long time. So it made the skin a lot drier and I lost a lot of the colour. Had I used a reptile skin product, it wouldn't have recoloured them. So something like this will work beautifully, but you can't just paint it on like I've discussed in the previous. You can't just paint it on thick. You have to do it very sparingly and stir it in with a brush. Otherwise it clogs. It clogs between the scales. See, the scale itself is quite sort of impervious. It's slightly shiny and moisture doesn't go through the scale very easily, but the crinkly skin between the scales is a much different texture. That's much more less impervious. It's more absorbent. And what happens? The cream is drawn to the creases first, and it tends to congeal in the creases. But if you sort of stir for long enough, it goes through the crease much more than it goes through the shiny scale. It does go through the scale, but it's very slow. It goes through the creases quite quickly. And if you rub it with a cloth and agitate it, it goes through, and it's like a capillary action. It draws the cream into the creases and then behind the scale and nourish it from behind, and it stops them peeling up. But it is weird stuff. But these will need a few weeks of applying the cream, stirring it in, like I've shown in previous videos, allowing it to dry, and then buffing dry. Because they're so old and so neglected, they will take at least a couple of weeks of reapplying, buffing, reapply, buff, and eventually the skin becomes saturated. These were, years ago when I bought them, they were very dry, and it took a few weeks. If I remember right, it might have even taken a month to get these skins saturated. But perhaps every so often, maybe once a year, once every couple of years, you just give them, just a single application. And it was the same with the reindeer skins, a single application of one of these creams, and then dry buff. This one, this is the Russian reindeer. It's already been buffed. You can see it's got a nice sort of sheen about it. There's no polish on that. I've just used a dry brush. Let's just make sure there's no residue on the brush. And I've literally just buffed it. Now that one's already been done. I wanted to show you the other one. And if we look, give the camera a chance to focus. This one's a bit matte and listless and ugly looking. And the other one's got a bit of a shine to it. It looks like it's been polished, but it hasn't been polished. It's just been dry buffed. Trying to apply polish onto a cream, onto a skin that's this sort of rough in texture, the polish would just clog, and but polishers work by building up, layer after layer. Once it's got layers built up on the surface, it can reflect light. But you could get this to build up on a rough and exotic skin, and certainly like the alligator, it'd be a nightmare if you tried to polish that. It will build up on the surface, but of course the surface is not flat. You'd have to build it up to such a point that it'd be so thick to get a flat reflective shine. And it will reflect light when it's built up. But when the skins are as uneven and lumpy as exotics are, it reflects light in all different directions, so you wouldn't appear to get a shine. Now, just dry buffing gives a much better sheen, a much better luster, and you don't lose the tones. See, let's have a look. Which one of these alligators? That one's been buffed. It's got more of this one's got slightly sticky. It's just got the most lovely sort of luster. And that will need probably another half an hour or so of dry buffing on the pair, then go to a very soft cloth. but they're not going to get moisturized again. This was just routine moisturizing. The other thing is, because it was routine, the color wasn't faded. I could have used a neutral like Sapphire's Reptan, something like that. But when the color's ruined, like it was on these, it certainly was on those when I bought them, you need something with a color pigment in. And anyway, I just wanted to show you the difference as well whilst I'm doing this between the sort of buffed and non-buffed. This has just had a couple of applications of cream. They've sunken in, and then let's just give it a bit of, excuse me, huffing into the. I'm wearing a lapel mic. The microphone's very close to my chin, so you'll be able to hear me breathing anytime you're doing anything physical. And I've also applied it to the soles, and it's just leather, so the soles do need a bit of moisturiser. But it comes up reasonably well. That's just a quick lick. I'll do this for about 10 or 15 minutes, but it's come up to quite a nice sort of sheen. Still a little bit tacky, so it's got a long way to go with the dry buffing. Then when it's gone as far as it'll go with a clean brush, then you use a soft cotton cloth. But, beautiful things, but none of this has been buffed. I've just buffed that on camera. The other thing I need to sort of discuss is what you can actually get away with using on exotic skins. Now, this is a fabulous product. It's made by Saphire, but it does contain mink oil. It's an extremely intensive moisturizer, and that contains mink oil. And it's almost certainly, if that were applied to an exotic skin, it would sort of darken the skin. It would slightly darken it, and it would look a little bit flat. It wouldn't have these amazing sort of let's have a look. That one's actually good. No, let's buff it. This one's not been buffed yet. The amazing sort of tones that show through. Some of that might be lost if using sort of neutrals, especially if they've got mink oil. And I also get people sending me messages advising me, oh, just use mink oil, just smear mink oil. It will nourish the skin. It will stop the skin creasing and not creasing. It will stop it cracking and drying out, but it will lose the luster. You'll never be able to shine over mink oil. So, and this is like a dub-in type of product. You definitely can't use that. That's good on things like hiking boots and the like. What's this? This, I believe, is very similar to the Saphire. It's a neutral sort of cream, but a lot of them contain mink oil. And then this is a traditional wax polish. It's just clear. It's very soft, easy to apply. That would be very easy to apply these shoes, but it's a wax polish that sits on the surface. And because the surface is uneven, it wouldn't create a shine. When the cream sinks in, you can buff it to a lovely sort of sheen like I've done there, and you do get a sheen. The cream sink in, the waxes sit on the surface, and anything sitting on an uneven surface, it's not going to appear to reflect light. It will, but in so many different directions, it won't appear to be shiny. So when people say you should polish or use mink oil or any other oil on exotic skins, they are mistaken. These are not designed. These are not designed for exotics, but they work extremely well. They don't darken the colour if you use a light one. If you use something quite dark, it would darken that. And I did have these dark with a slight red tint to it, but I've cleaned that off, and that's the way I liked it. These are getting sold, so I've gone back more to the natural colour. But these contain, I know they contain beeswax, and there's a possibility of some lanolin in there, but I'm not absolutely sure without checking the ingredients list. But it doesn't have mink oil. And it's the mink oil or any other oil, neat's foot oil. But people also say use saddle soap. They're just guessing, they're mistaken. So do be careful with exotic skins. I absolutely know that the Saphire range, the coloured range, doesn't darken, doesn't leave a greasy surface behind. It's not what it's designed for. And as I said, Saphire do a reptile product, which is wonderful for maintenance. These are being maintained because the skins are in good condition. They just need a quick lick over and a buff. But these are being restored, and it takes weeks to get the skin to rehydrate and recolour. The Reptan, because it's a neutral, it would have been no good in this instance on these. But at the stage these are at, it'd be perfectly fine. So it depends whether you're restoring or maintaining. The Reptan as a restoration, it just doesn't bring the colour pigment back. but it will deal with the condition. So this is a bit rambly. I don't know if I probably said too much. Maybe I made it a little bit confusing, but I really just wanted you to see these sort of being dry buffed. I do talk about dry buffing in my videos quite a lot, and this is what I'm talking about. And I'll just buff and buff and buff until this all sort of traces of surface cream are gone, and it just got a nice luster. And these are going to get sold just like that. I'm not polishing them, and I certainly won't be polishing these, but they will have an intense luster. They will appear to be polished. They don't need any more. They only need dry buffing, but like I keep saying, these need a lot more. I'm going to be applying more of this cream later today, and over the next couple of weeks before I come to the dry buffing. I say dry. You do have to buff between coats, but just a quick buff. Take any surface away, and then apply more cream, and eventually it just stops absorbing the cream, and you're left with a slightly tacky feel to the surface.